And now it's time for the Michelin Drivers Report, brought to you by Michelin and your participating Michelin dealers.
As hurricanes make landfall, they can bring in extensive amounts of rain. We're going to be seeing tons of tropical moisture feeding in across the southeast, and with that, a serious threat for some flooding. Now, already numerous flash flood watches and warnings have been posted, and it may not be uncommon to see 5 to 10 inches worth of rain in the path of Hurricane Fran. So indeed, flooding will be a big problem here across the east the next couple of days. By the same token, though, we've got a frontal boundary coming in across the west, spreading some showers and storms, maybe some severe weather later on today for Bismarck and Minot back towards Rapid City, maybe some stormy conditions, too, near the Denver metro area. We've got some fog, but it's rapidly burning off. And again, the winds should really start to pick up, really some windy, squally weather coming in across the Carolinas as Hurricane Fran continues to approach the coast. Speaking of Hurricane Fran, we'll have some live updates coming up from the Carolina shoreline coming up in just a few moments. More on Hurricane Fran coming up next.
At Michelin, we believe a tire that's just good in the rain isn't good enough. Introducing the Michelin X1 with a 6-year unlimited mileage tread life warranty. It's the one tire that gives you better wet traction than any rain tire, plus control in any driving condition. After all, it hasn't rained that much in years. The Michelin X1.
Find Michelin tires at this dealer near you, because so much is riding on your tires.
Coming up on a special edition of WeatherScope, the latest on Hurricane Fran, right after your local forecast. This is a special edition of WeatherScope, comprehensive coverage of Hurricane Fran from the Weather Channel.
Thanks a lot for joining us. Rick Griffin live in the Weather Channel Forecast Center with the latest on powerful Hurricane Fran off the east coast, southeast coast of the United States. Very strong hurricane, and we have the latest coordinates for you. Let's go right to those. In fact, I'm going to read you some new coordinates. These are just in. This is the 8 o'clock position you're seeing on the screen here, but let me read to you the 11 o'clock updated position. It's 31.5 north, 77.4 west. That's 31.5 degrees north, 77.4 west. The center located about 170 miles south-southeast of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. The pressure has not changed. It's still about 954 millibars to 8.17 inches of mercury. And the maximum sustained winds have remained the same, about 115. Now, there's some changes in the hurricane watches and warnings, and I'll be telling you more about that coming up in just a little bit. Let's take a look at Fran on the satellite picture. Again, of course, here is the eye on the hurricane, about 170 miles south-southeast of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. the eye looking a little bit on the ragged side right now, as you can see. But again, Fran has to cross the Gulf Stream, warm Gulf Stream waters just off the coast, and when Fran crosses those warm waters, some intensification is certainly not out of the question. We'll watch that for you very closely. Spiral bands again approaching the coast, and we think it won't be too long before, say, tropical storm force winds are hitting the coastline. They will come in well in advance of the core of the hurricane, and you should be advised about that. Once again, the area of greatest concern, southeast North Carolina coast, eastern, northeast North Carolina area, say from Charleston on northeast. That is the greatest threat for landfall sometime later on tonight. Now here's Doppler radar, and as you can see, the heaviest of the squalls are still well offshore, but one or two are getting very close to the coastline. In fact, right here about Cape Fear, it looks like very heavy rainfall coming down at this point. And in fact, we have two folks on the scene. Jeff Morrow's in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, right here. Jim Cantore up at Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, which is just outside Wilmington, right on the coastal section of North Carolina, right about in here. And it could be this area that sees the real brunt of Hurricane Fran as it comes on shore. Again, we expect landfall sometime overnight tonight. So again, we have two folks live on the scene. We're going to go first to Jeff Morrow, who's live in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Jeff, tell us how conditions have changed so far this morning in Myrtle Beach.
Well, they've progressively gone downhill, Rick. No two ways about it. We're talking about when we first came out this morning, about 5:30 or so, quarter to 6, the moon was out, actually. You could see a little sliver of a moon, and some stars were out, and there was hardly any wind at all, definitely no rain. However, now that we've gone through the mid and late morning, the rain has continued to come down. It's pretty much a steady light rain. At times it'll come down briefly a little bit harder. In fact, it's picking up even as I speak here just a little bit. I don't know if Randy can show behind me. At times, these palm trees, and we're going to kind of use these as a gauge as we head on through the afternoon, how strong the wind is. They're not really moving all that much yet, so you can tell that the wind isn't that big a problem. Again, we expect that to change. Also wanted to show you the surf, and it has definitely picked up. We're talking about a swell here, probably on the order of about 5 to occasionally 6 foot breakers. There's some pretty big waves starting to come in now, generally coming out of the due east. And well, as we look off to the southeast, we can see it's pretty dark, and that's the general direction that the storm, the hurricane, is coming in. That's what Randy's panning around here a little bit for now. He's looking a little bit more south down toward the Myrtle Beach Pier here. But again, the conditions on the beach have worsened. Everybody has pretty much evacuated except for a few locals. And I think the folks here would be very happy if this storm maybe moved a little bit farther away. But it looks like we're going to get some pretty bad weather here tonight.
Well, Jeff, in that event that the storm continues to make that little more northward turn and the center were to come in, say, north of you, that would be good news for your area, wouldn't it?
Oh, definitely would be good news. I mean, again, we don't want to minimize being anywhere near a hurricane, but you're right. If we're on the south side, that means the winds will be coming offshore and opposed to onshore, and so the storm surge would probably not be as bad on the south side, whereas on the north side with the onshore winds, that's where you're going to get the very bad storm surge. So it just depends on where that eye comes in, and we'll be watching with you closely exactly where that is.
We'll be checking in with you every half hour. Thanks a lot, Jeff Morrow, live, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Well, we've got another satellite view of Hurricane Fran. We showed you the infrared enhanced satellite picture just a few moments ago. Now we can go to the visible satellite picture. And again, we can see the eye about 25 to 30 miles across. Again, kind of a ragged eye at this particular time, as you can see, especially right here on the northwestern quadrant, let's say, of the eye. Offshore, by the way, some buoys out in here have been reporting easterly winds 40 to 60 knots and 20-foot seas out in this area. And again, the heaviest seas, the roughest conditions, the brunt of Hurricane Fran still well off the coast. But as you can see, it's making its way to the northwest, getting ever so closer to the coastline. So we definitely have a very serious situation developing. And one area that could be well, we do have, again, a radar. Let's go from the visible satellite to the radar picture and show you what's going on. This is the wide shot Doppler radar, and you can look out here. You can see the eye of the hurricane, the eye wall right around the center. That's where the most vicious conditions are located. That will not be coming on shore until later on tonight. But again, the tropical storm force conditions are going to be coming inland well in advance of the the main part of the hurricane. Now, one area that could be hit extremely hard is southeastern sections of North Carolina, because Jim Cantore, it looks like the center could potentially come on shore just south of you, and that could be really bad news for Wrightsville Beach.
Oh, absolutely, Rick. All of southeastern North Carolina was well aware that we still had a little bit of variety left in the track as we worked our way through the evening hours of last night. And that variety definitely holded true today, as we saw just a little bit more of a northward jog, potentially bring the storm in down around Little River Inlet, which would still put us on that eastern and northeastern semicircle of the storm. And that is, of course, as you know, the most powerful side of the storm, which we anticipate later on this afternoon and this evening. As we go behind and look at the beach here, I did want to show you these breakers as long as we can continue to see them. Obviously, some very, very strong breakers coming in as much as 8 to 10 feet. We have more of an easterly component here than Jeff has, and the winds yesterday were pretty strong, and I would imagine with that squall line offshore, that didn't help anything either, but definitely dealing with 8 to 10 foot breakers, and they are continuing to grow, of course, as the tide will come in toward high tide to 2 to 4 o'clock. As you look at the Johnny Mercer Pier, you'll notice as we get toward the end of that pier, a little chunk of it taken off by Hurricane Bertha back in July. And all bets are, with the way Fran is heading right now, that perhaps the rest of that pier may not be here when we check back in within the next couple of days. Rick.
Jim, there's that mandatory evacuation of residents on the barrier islands, beachfront property. How is that evacuation going?
It's going fine. We've been well aware of what's been going on with these evacuations, not only here in New Hanover County, but also up the road a piece toward Cape Lookout and Morehead City. They're doing evacuations of the beaches and the barrier islands, and a lot of this is underway. Just a lot of last-minute things right now, Rick, are being tended to, and the people that you see behind me here on the beaches will be either asked to leave nicely or they will be arrested as of noontime today.
All right, Jim Cantore, live in Wrightsville Beach. Thanks a lot. We'll check in with you again in about a half an hour. Let's take a look at the latest. Well, this map is not going to go along with what I tell you, because we have updated hurricane watches and warnings. Let's go right to the map. I'll read these off to you. Once again, the 11 o'clock update. Now hurricane warnings are in effect from Edisto Beach, South Carolina, to the North Carolina-Virginia border, including Pamlico and Albemarle Sounds. Hurricane watch and a tropical storm warning are in effect north of the North Carolina-Virginia border to Chincoteague, Virginia, including the greater Hampton Roads area. And a tropical storm warning is in effect for the lower Chesapeake Bay. Hurricane warning north of Brunswick, Georgia, to south of Edisto Beach is changed to a tropical storm warning. Let's go quickly to the strike probability. Again, the greatest threat, upper South Carolina coast, southeastern North Carolina. Again, the tropical storm, hurricane force winds are still offshore at this time, but we do expect the tropical storm conditions to come onshore shortly, and then on the front of the hurricane arriving tonight. And again, we can't forget that storm surge, which will be the highest just to the right of where the center comes onshore, and that could very well be southeastern sections of North Carolina. Of course, with Fran wobbling about a little bit, it's difficult to tell exactly where Fran's going to come onshore, but I showed you the greatest threat area. We'll be continuing to cover Hurricane Fran for you every half hour, but now right back to the studio.
Time to get dressed. We're late. Band practice after school. Mom! Jimmy, don't forget your homework. Quick, pick out something to drink.
Mom!
Hurry up. Okay, we got purple boxes, soda, and Sunny D.
Grab a Sunny D. Yeah.
Sunny Delight singles have the great taste kids love and the same vitamins as Big Sunny Delight.
Okay, guys, let's get in the car.
But Mom, it's Saturday.
I knew that. How about a picnic?
Mom needs a vacation.
Sunny Delight, the good stuff kids go for.
Coverage with special expanded reports on the hour and half hour.
Camp is rough. Being out in the wild sure makes a kid hungry. But the sandwiches we got just aren't enough. It makes me homesick for you and a hot bowl of Campbell's tomato soup.
Nothing turns an ordinary sandwich into a hot, satisfying meal like rich, wholesome Campbell's tomato soup.
Mom?
I brought you something for those sandwiches.
Wow, tomato soup. You're the best, Mom.
Campbell's makes everything.
Some jobs need a smaller paper towel. Other jobs need a bigger towel. You need Select-A-Size, the bounty you customize. Special smaller sheets. Choose 1, 2, or 3 sheets. As little or as much as you need of the quilted Quicker Picker-Upper that's more durable even on carpets.
The quilted Quicker Picker-Upper.
Select-A-Size, the bounty you customize.
Begins as a tropical wave churning over open waters. The Weather Channel Forecast Center downloads critical information while tracking what could become one of nature's most powerful forces. The storm is on the move. The Weather Channel tropical team stays ahead of it, using the latest in forecast technology. And if it threatens the coast, our experts will report live from the scene so you'll know what's happening. Comprehensive, up-to-the-minute tropical updates, 50 minutes past every hour on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by the Home Depot.
America's invented at the hardware store, and it's reinvented every day. ServiceStar's Great American Fix-Up Month's going on right now all across the country. It's great prices on a lot of things that you need. We have Great American Fix-Up specials on True Temper's lawn rake and Mako liquid nails at the lowest prices of the year. ServiceStar stores offer great service and great value, knowledgeable help. Hey, this is really worth the trip.
Visit your local ServiceStar Hardware, Lumber, and Home Center now during the ServiceStar Great American Fix-Up Month. ServiceStar is your good neighbor, good advice store.
Only Forever Storm Doors offer you the store and door window and screen. Slide the window out of sight and pull up the screen. When weather changes, so can you. A little fresh air or a lot.
Forever Storm Doors. Feel the difference.
Forever Storm Doors stay beautiful year after year. Even the interchangeable screen, the toughest made. So unique, it's patented. I love this part. It won't pull out of the frame. Can we do that again?
Forever. Huh? Feel the difference.
Available at America's finest home improvement centers.
Right now, the weather is changing. What's here today can be gone tomorrow. Because we know you need to plan and prepare, we dedicate a special team to forecasting the outlook for the days ahead. So you know what to expect. Watch our 5-day planner, 20 minutes after every hour on the Weather Channel. No place on Earth has better weather.
The new giant Caesar makes everything else look small.
What are you looking at? The Grand Canyon. Where? Right there. Where? Right there.
What you eating?
Giant Caesar.
What you stepping in?
Has to be China.
Everything looks small next to the giant Caesar. What? From Little Caesar's giant slices with giant pepperoni, $9.99 carried out or have it delivered.
Piece of pizza. Every year, the guys get younger and younger. There's a rookie who's 19. That even makes me feel old. That's why I'd never play a game without my Ginsana. Ginsana is the real stuff. G115 ginseng. It works through my body to help make the most of my natural energy, so I feel good.
Ginsana Energy helps you run the court and your life.
Everybody's got a choice. You can feel your age, or you can feel your Ginsana.
Feel your Ginsana, the original all-natural energizer.
If you or anyone you love has ever suffered from low back pain, poor circulation, minor arthritic-like pain, or just poor sleep, you owe it to yourself to call for this free 50-minute video with health tips from Dr. Nagler and this free Celebrity Choice adjustable bed catalog. Dr. Nagler, Chief of Physical Medicine at Cornell University Medical Center, will share his valuable health tips on how to live a long and healthy life. And you'll hear Celebrity Choice adjustable bed owners tell how their bed helps relieve many aches and pains that would just never go away. And you'll learn the advantages adjustable beds have over flat, air, and water beds, and all in the privacy of your home with absolutely no high pressure. So call for your free 50-minute video with health tips from Dr. Nagler. The video and your Celebrity Choice catalog are free if you call right now.
Call 1-800-328-9100. No purchase necessary. Get your free video and catalog now. 1-800-328-9100. Fran is a dangerous Category 3 hurricane. Stay with the Weather Channel for comprehensive coverage and live reports from the Carolinas. The Weather Channel. No place on Earth has better weather.
This 5-day planner is sponsored by Wheaton Worldwide Moving. With Wheaton, all moves point to customer satisfaction. And let's show you what's going on with Fran right now. The latest stats as of 11 o'clock this morning, Eastern Daylight Time. Fran is located at 31.5 north, 77.4 west, or about 170 miles to the south-southeast of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Top sustained wind still at 115. It was moving to the north-northwest at 16 miles per hour, and the pressure holding just about steady right now at 954 millibars. You can see the track of Fran during the last several days. It's making a little bit more of a curve now, more towards the north. So if you live anywhere along the upper South Carolina coastline into North Carolina, you better take precautions right now. Should be evacuating much of the coast areas for sure, because we're going to be looking at a dangerous situation developing very quickly by later on this afternoon and certainly after dark tonight. This is the latest satellite picture, as we can see right now, of Fran beginning to turn its way to the north-northwest and making a beeline right now just about right towards the South Carolina-North Carolina border. It's going to be making landfall somewhere in this vicinity right now, and already we'll be looking at some heavy rains bashing the shoreline within the next hour or two or three, and the winds will really be picking up as you look at the next several hours. We'll enhance our satellite picture and show you all of the deep convection around the center of circulation right here. The deeper the reds, the stronger the thunderstorms, and also the more powerful the hurricanes from time to time. And we're going to be looking at these feeder bands and these bands of precipitation whipping back towards the shoreline. And again, for much of North Carolina and eastern South Carolina, you're going to be looking at some big-time problems during the next 12 to 18 hours. And beyond that, as it begins to drift its way into North Carolina, maybe Virginia too. We'll be looking at some heavy flooding occurring as you look at much of the central Appalachians as well, then moving northward from there. Hurricane warnings right now from Modesto Beach in South Carolina up the coastline to the North Carolina-Virginia border. These may be extended even more north than this as you look at the next several hours, depending upon the exact track of what's going to be happening with Fran. And we also have a tornado watch in effect right now. Many times landfalling hurricanes are associated with tornadoes, and again we're looking at that possibility now for the eastern Carolinas until midnight Eastern Daylight Time. These may be extended northward as well a little bit later on. Take a look at the winds right now beginning to fan away from the center of circulation where it's calm right now in the eye of the storm, and look at the expansive tropical storm force winds almost making it onshore right now, getting very close to the coastline of southern North Carolina and also much of southern North Carolina, much of South Carolina right now. Of course, we're looking at high surf conditions, and it's going to be real rough out there for today. The strike probability, where is this hurricane going to be going? It seems like the steering currents right now are pointing right towards that North Carolina-South Carolina border. That's what we're focusing on right now. Any deviation from this, we'll let you know immediately, and we can tell a lot by our satellite pictures and computer models, but right now it seems to be right in through here. So the upper South Carolina coastline, the lower North Carolina coastline are most vulnerable at the present time. Exactly what are we looking at as far as the storm surge? Anywhere between 8 and 16 feet as you look at the eye wall making landfall a little bit later on this evening. Again, we're going to be talking about the upper South Carolina coastline and extreme southeastern North Carolina along the coast as well. So again, a tremendous storm surge is on tap a little bit later on. This is the latest Doppler radar coming in right now, and we can point out what's going on over the eastern Carolinas, and you can see the bands of heavy rainfall just coming on shore right now for both North Carolina and also around South Carolina as well. So again, we're going to be looking at, this is just the very, very beginning. Tremendous amounts of rainfall will be coming in from the southeast and begin to advect down towards the northwest. And we're going to be looking at some big time problems there. Let's show you what's going to be happening now during the next couple of days. We'll be watching Fran moving on inland, and there Fran goes, begins to dissipate by Friday afternoon and by early morning tomorrow. But the rainfall amounts are going to be very, very heavy. Temperatures are going to be rather seasonal and even below seasonal normals because of the clouds and the rain coming in for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and also Monday as you look at the northeastern part of the country, and also into Tuesday too. Watch the rain now invade the northeastern part of the country, the remnants of Fran for the weekend, and we'll watch for another front gain some more moisture and also begin to head on toward the southeast, which means some more rainy conditions for the deep south on Tuesday.
Moving. A lot can happen between point A and point B. At point B, you might be worried that your favorite things didn't arrive safely. Not when you move with Wheaton Worldwide Moving. A lot can happen between point A and point B. With Wheaton, it all points to customer satisfaction. That's why we're the official movers for Steinway & Sons pianos. Call us and we'll tell you why. We're the best.
For this and more valuable moving information, talk to one of our over 300 professional Wheaton agents nationwide. See your yellow pages for the Wheaton agent nearest you.
When asked, 9 out of 10 people say they'd rather be on vacation than at home.
Come on. I'm bored. Hey, do not throw the dust.
Of course, most of the people they asked didn't own a John Deere, because in survey after survey, folks are more satisfied with John Deere than other lawn tractors.
Honey, it's green.
It sure is. Nothing runs like a deer.
For more information about John Deere lawn and garden equipment, contact your local John Deere dealer.
It was another near miss for the state of Florida, for the Sunshine State. You can see where the hurricane is right now off the Carolina coastline, beginning to move its way on towards the north-northwest, making landfall somewhere near the North Carolina-South Carolina border along the coastline. But the Sunshine State right now, heavy surf along the east side, of course. Otherwise, you're looking at a lot of sunshine, and temperatures are going to really begin to rebound today, well into the 90s just about statewide. Looking at low to middle 90s from Orlando on southward. The really cooler spot, if we call it cool, is going to be Panama City at 89 degrees. The water temperatures are still very, very nice. Vero Beach 85 degrees, Key West 83, Panama City a little bit cooler at 78 degrees. And this is going to be the forecast probably projected all weekend long with a lot of sunshine, maybe an afternoon shower or thunderstorm, but it doesn't look bad at all. Well, coming up next on the Weather Channel, latest on WeatherScope, we'll go back to the Forecast Center and have a live update on Hurricane Fran.
A lot of folks need peace of mind these days, and that's just what they get with Napa Auto Care's Peace of Mind warranty. Repairs are guaranteed on both parts and labor for 6 months or 6,000 miles anywhere they travel. And when they use the Napa card, they're guaranteed doubles to 12 months or 12,000 miles. How do I know our customers find peace of mind here? Because I own this shop, and their peace of mind is guaranteed.
We keep America running. We keep America running.
Napa Auto Care Centers. Napa, we keep America running.
60 meteorologists, advanced weather technology. Stay ahead of the storm. Tropical updates 50 minutes past every hour on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by the Home Depot. Coming up on a special edition of WeatherScope, the latest on Hurricane Fran, right after your local forecast. This is a special edition of WeatherScope, comprehensive coverage of Hurricane Fran from the Weather Channel.
Well, dangerous Hurricane Fran continues to approach the southeastern coastline of the United States on this Thursday morning. Thanks a lot for joining us. I'm Rick Griffin, live in the Weather Channel Forecast Center. First of all, we want to go right to the latest coordinates. This is the 11 o'clock update on Hurricane Fran, a powerful hurricane, max winds sustained at 115. If you're following the storm, plotting it on your hurricane chart, 31.5 north, 77.4 west. That puts the center of circulation, the eye of the storm, if you will, 170 miles south-southeast of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Pressure has not changed since the intermediate observation at 8 o'clock this morning, 954 millibars. The movement of the storm, though, has increased. It's up to 16 miles an hour, moving in a north-northwesterly direction. I do have some updated hurricane watches and warnings, tropical storm warnings as well. Be passing those along to you in just a second. We want to go live, though. We've got two folks live on the scene. Our first stop, I believe, is going to be Jeff Morrow. He's live in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Jeff, of course, you know, Jim Cantore is up at Wrightsville Beach. The wind is more perpendicular to the coastline, but in your area, you were saying that it's more parallel to the coast. And how is that affecting conditions right now?
Well, it's pretty much causing the surf to be not as high, Rick, as where Jim's been. I know the swells up there have been upwards of 10 even 11 or 12 feet from what Jim's been reporting. Here again with more of a parallel wind flow, as you mentioned, coming down the beach, and Randy's going to pan over here and show you some of the surf. It has not been as high. The swell is coming at an angle down here on the beach. It has come up this morning since we've been here. I would say on the order of about 3, 4. Occasionally you'll see a higher wave come in about maybe 6 feet, but that is the exception rather than the rule at this time. But I expect as we head through the afternoon that conditions will worsen here. The tide is coming in. We expect a high tide around 3 or 4 this afternoon, so we expect a lot of the beach that you're looking at behind me here to maybe be overwashed at that time, but no big problems. The bigger problems, of course, will come as the hurricane gets closer as we head on into tonight.
And so far you've had only basically light rain in your region?
Yeah, pretty much so. Occasionally it'll come down a little bit harder, but I can't say that it's been anything more than generally a steady light rain at this point. It's enough to get us pretty wet, but it hasn't really started coming down. I'm sure as those bigger squall bands start to get closer to the coast, we'll see more of that and an increase in the winds as well.
Some of those squalls, Jeff, are getting very close to the coastline, and we noticed in the last report that the hurricane is moving more quickly, now moving north-northwest at about 16 miles per hour.
I understand that, of course, would move up the projected time of landfall. What are you thinking about as far as a potential landfall time now?
Still appears it's going to be sometime after dark tonight. I think we're holding with that time period at this point.
Okay.
Jeff Morrow, live in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Thanks a lot, Jeff, for your latest report. We'll be back to you in about a half an hour.
Okay.
All right, we've got an infrared satellite picture of Hurricane Fran. Let's take a look at that, and we can see on the enhanced colorized satellite view the center, the eye of the storm right here, looking just a little bit on the ragged side at this time. It's not a real symmetrical eye. It's about 25 to 30 miles across, according to the Hurricane Hunter aircraft. Now the center of circulation getting closer to the Gulf Stream waters, a band of warm waters off the east coast, and as the storm crosses that, there is potential for intensification. We'll have to watch that very closely. Right now, again, the rain bands, the squally weather, tropical storm force winds getting closer to the coastline right about in here, and of course the tropical storm conditions will precede the core of the hurricane by a good period of time. In fact, within the next hour or two, it looks like hurricane force winds could arrive on the coast. Again, light to moderate rain, coastal sections, heavier squalls offshore, and I don't know that you can see it at home, but I can just begin to pick out maybe the eye of the storm appearing on the Wilmington radar here at the very bottom of your screen. I don't know whether you can see that. More squalls in eastern sections of North Carolina. That's where our Jim Cantore is located. He's at Wrightsville Beach. And Jim, with the, I think the high tide in your region is somewhere after midnight tonight. And with that storm surge coming up, it could be a very, very serious situation.
Yeah, we've already had some high waves, and adding the surge on top of those waves could be unbelievable. As a matter of fact, you can go behind me here, and we can tell you just how unbelievable it could be. We're looking at the Johnny Mercer Pier here. You'll notice that the end of that pier is missing. That was compliments of Hurricane Bertha back in July. Now, I was talking to a couple of locals here, and they said that the surf was over 4 feet on top of that pier when Bertha came in. And remember, Fran is much stronger than Bertha. We're anticipating that perhaps this pier and this restaurant, which these guys are obviously putting in a pretty good effort to try and secure down as best as they can, will probably not be here after Fran. Of course, we're hoping that it will be, but perhaps not. As we head down toward the beach, some of the last onlookers, if you will, before the mandatory evacuations become very, very valid at noontime today, are obviously getting the last look at what the ocean looks like before all sorts of havoc begins to open up tonight. And we do think it's going to really go downhill in a hurry, Rick, as we get into later on this afternoon and tonight.
Well, Jim, if the center of the hurricane comes on shore just south of you, that means you're on sort of like the bad side of the storm, and the surges could reach 8 to 16 feet. And of course, you're going to have the battering waves on top of the storm surge.
Yeah, it looks real bad, especially down in Brunswick County, which is that southern county. It's kind of shaped, Rick, like a contact lens on its edges, and that means the water's going to be pushed up into that bay, and it's not going to be allowed to leave. That could be some of the worst surge over toward Cape Fear, and then as you go up the Cape Fear coast, here toward Wrightsville Beach, we may not have that exact perpendicular angle, but there's no doubt the surge is going to be high, and we will definitely deal with damaging winds, hurricane force winds, as we work our way into this afternoon and tonight. Conditions here continue to slowly worsen. The winds are on the increase, and occasionally the gusts get up over 30 miles an hour. And like you showed on the radar, there's some vicious cells that are offshore and bands that will come in here later on today, Rick.
Now, those squalls are just a few miles away from the coastline, Jim, and well, we'll be checking in with you in about 25 minutes, so stand by, and we'll get another live report from you. Jim Cantore, Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, thanks a lot. Let's go right to another perspective, another view of Fran. That's our visible satellite picture. Showed you the enhanced colorized infrared picture a little while ago, but looking at the visible picture, here's the eye of the storm. Again, about 170 miles south-southeast, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. By the way, again, the brunt of the storm still offshore, as you can probably guess by the position on the satellite picture. We've checked in with some of the buoys out in here, and they're indicating east winds at 40 to 60 knots and 20-foot seas out in this vicinity. So conditions are deteriorating offshore and coastal sections of the Carolinas. Again, we'll see tropical storm force conditions developing shortly, and then hurricane force conditions overnight tonight. But the greatest area of concern, again, northeast South Carolina, southeastern North Carolina. Another perspective, you can see the eye of the storm offshore here on the Doppler radar in motion. Let's get a look at the hurricane warnings. Again, they've been updated. Edisto Beach northward to the North Carolina-Virginia border, hurricane warnings. Up to Chincoteague, Virginia, hurricane watch. Either side of the watches and warnings, tropical storm warnings, Brunswick to Edisto Beach in South Carolina. And the strike probability, how about that? Well, the greatest chance of landfall, the greatest chance of the center of the storm passing within 60 miles of any one particular location. Again, the northeast South Carolina, southeast North Carolina coastal areas. Of course, Jeff Morrow's at Myrtle Beach, and here, Jim Cantore up towards Wrightsville Beach. And we will be checking in with those guys every half an hour to see what's happening. The weather deteriorating, tropical storm force winds on the coast right now, but again, the brunt of the hurricane still quite a distance offshore. Storm surges, they will be the worst on the right-hand side of where the storm makes landfall as that water piles up, and you have the battering waves on top of that, and we're talking storm surges of 8 to 16 feet, perhaps. So it could be a very serious situation. And of course, we're talking about heavy rains and the potential for flooding on down the road, particularly on the east slopes of the Appalachians. We'll be talking about that as well. Powerful Hurricane Fran continues to approach the coast. We'll have more for you in 20 minutes. Stay with us.
And we'll check out your national forecast right now, reminding everybody that tropical storm and hurricane forecast positions are provided to the Weather Channel by the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida. Very quickly, we'll show you the national forecast. Of course, the big news is going to be our landfalling hurricane coming late today into early on this evening across the North Carolina, South Carolina border, somewhere in that vicinity. Heavy rain, squally winds, hurricane force winds even inland for quite a while before this thing is downgraded to a tropical storm well after midnight tonight. And you can see if you live around Raleigh, Durham, or Chapel Hill and up towards Charlotte, you're going to be looking at a real mess there as well. Middle part of the country doesn't look all that bad, and by late Friday afternoon, still looking at some heavy rainfall for the central Appalachians. The latest on Fran yet to come during the next few minutes.
We put so many chocolate cookies into Hershey's Cookies and Cream. You get a mouthful of cookies in every bite of our delicious white chocolate. Hershey's Cookies and Cream. A mouthful of cookies in every bite.
Fran is a dangerous Category 3 hurricane. Stay with the Weather Channel for comprehensive coverage and live reports from the Carolinas.
No matter what size fax you send, no matter where in the world you send it, AT&T guarantees it'll get there. Because now, AT&T has 70% more international routes, which means more ways to get around trouble and more ways to steer clear of danger. So your international fax gets through. No matter where in the world you send it. Guaranteed network reliability at a competitive price, only from AT&T for the life of your business.
Freedom of choice, the foundation of the American marketplace. When searching for insurance to protect yourself, your family, your property, or your business, an independent insurance agent can offer you a lot more choices. Independent agents are free to help you shop around. They're experienced in navigating the marketplace to find the best coverage for the right price. Look for the big I and call today.
Independent agents representing consumers for over a century. Visit your local independent agent today.
60 meteorologists, advanced weather technology. Stay ahead of the storm. Tropical updates 50 minutes past every hour on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by the Home Depot.
America's invented at the hardware store, and it's reinvented every day. Service Star's Great American Fix-Up Month's going on right now all across the country. It's great prices on a lot of things that you need. We have Great American Fix-Up specials on a Stanley tape rule and utility knife, and a great buy from Frost King at the lowest prices of the year. Service Star stores offer great service and great value, knowledgeable help. Hey, this is really worth the trip.
Visit your local Service Star Hardware, Lumber, and Home Center now during the Service Star Great American Fix-Up Month. Service Star is your good neighbor, good advice store.
Discover the mysteries of weather with fascinating products from the Weather Channel. CD-ROMs, videos, books, calendars, and more. To receive your free catalog, call 1-800-250-5979 today.
This seasonal solution is sponsored by Orkin Pest Control. One call destroys them all. Call 1-800-800-ORKIN.
Now's the time to take advantage of the great spring weather and get your home and yard ready for the upcoming change of seasons. Start by cleaning away any winter storm debris from around your house and yard. Inspect your home and then repair any exterior damage. Turn on the outside water supply, checking the sprinkler system. Have your air conditioner serviced and check for leaks. Remove storm windows, replacing them with screens. Check for any loose or bent hardware and scrub clean the area around the window. If needed, repaint the window frames. Do the same with your storm door. Replacing the glass with a screen will keep out any pesky bugs, but still allow in the cool evening air. All these tips will help you get your home ready for the summer and help you maintain your investment.
They destroy your home from within. Termites. You need the exterminator, the Orkin Man. He stops termites and makes sure they never return. Guaranteed. Call him day or night at 1-800-800-ORKIN.
Full of muscle, and you could take 4 Advil in the course of a day, or 6 Tylenol. On the other hand, you could take just 2 Aleve. It says so on the label. It's your choice.
Aleve. All day strong, all day long.
Every day, families on vacation pack too much, and business travelers forget where they park their rental cars. But there's one given in life you'll always appreciate: Hampton Inn and Hampton Inn & Suites. At more than 550 locations, we guarantee the same friendly service, the same fresh, comfortable rooms, and a complimentary continental breakfast buffet. And if you're not happy, your night stay is free. It's one of those things you can always count on. Call 1-800-HAMPTON.
Weekends, we know they're important. We also know that the weather can make them or break them. That's why every Tuesday through Friday and Saturday mornings we present Weekend Outlook, a thorough report on what you can expect for the weekend before it arrives. A special team of the Weather Channel meteorologists continuously updates a comprehensive forecast so you can make plans or change plans for a great weekend no matter what the weather. Tuesday through Friday and Saturday mornings, Weekend Outlook during WeatherScope every hour and half hour on the Weather Channel.
Get weather forecasts for over 900 cities nationwide any time of day on the Weather Channel website, www.weather.com. No place on Earth has better weather.
When the rain didn't stop for 12 hours, I didn't think it could get any worse. And when the floodwaters came and washed away everything we'd worked our whole lives for, I still didn't think it could get any worse. And when the waters receded, and all I wanted to do was pick up the pieces, that was the worst. I forgot. Our homeowners insurance doesn't cover floods.
Flood insurance from the National Flood Insurance Program covers you from the damage caused by floods. Call now, because while most disasters in the United States involve floods, most homeowners' policies don't cover flood damage.
How are we ever going to pay for this?
Flood insurance is easy to get. Just call your insurance company, agent, or this number. The National Flood Insurance Program. We can't replace your memories, but we can help you build new ones.
On-the-clock coverage with special expanded reports on the hour and half hour. No place on Earth has better weather. Forecasts from the Weather Channel are also available from the following.
Good morning, and thanks for joining us. You're just in time for our tropical update. And of course, we have the latest now on Fran. If you're plotting this along with us, it's at 31.5 north, and that's at 77.4 west. It's about 170 miles south-southeast of Myrtle Beach. It has winds to 115 miles per hour, so the winds, fortunately, have not increased over the past couple of hours or so. The movement has. It's still moving north-northwest at 16 miles per hour, but it has increased in its forward speed. More on that coming up in a minute. Pressure, 28.17 inches. That's 954 millibars. You can see the steady track of Fran. Overnight, it began more of a northward jog, and it does look like if it continues on this current track, it will make landfall right along the border of North Carolina and South Carolina. Again, you can follow the center of circulation, and that would take it right on shore. Of course, these storms can wobble at the last minute, and this one certainly could, but at this point, the highest strike probability is right here. And again, it has increased in its forward speed in the past couple of hours or so. Now, if you were watching us early this morning around 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, it was only moving at about 12 miles per hour, but it has picked up speed, now moving at 16 miles per hour on that north-northwest track. So again, that takes it on shore later on tonight into the early morning hours. Folks along the coast are already beginning to see the rain associated with Fran, and of course, though, when you see the yellows and the reds, the coldest, the highest, coldest cloud tops right around the center of circulation. Now, the hurricane force winds with this storm extend out 145 miles from the center of circulation. 145 miles, mainly on the north and east side. And then the tropical storm force winds extend almost 300 miles out from the center of circulation. So this is a ferocious storm, and you can see that we're already starting to see some rain right along the coast. Now, offshore at some of the buoys, we've had reports of 20-foot swells. They could reach as high as 30 feet. And so very, very high swells and some winds gusting to 60 and 70 miles per hour at some of those buoys just offshore here. So it seems to be moving quickly off the north-northwest at 16 miles per hour. Again, it has picked up speed, so that's a slight concern. We do want to let you know, of course, you probably know this if you've been watching us, but hurricane warnings remain in effect from Edisto Beach all the way up to the border of North Carolina and Virginia. We're especially concerned about the barrier islands. If you live on one, you should have already evacuated. If you haven't, think about it right now, because time will be running out. And I'm not sure about the ferry situation around Ocracoke. I believe we'll talk more about that at the top of the hour, but that's a tough island to get off of if they've discontinued the ferry. Now, this is not in effect yet, but as of 1 o'clock this afternoon, we'll start looking out for the possibility of tornadoes, and we'll continue to watch for that possibility all the way until midnight tonight. So again, a tornado watch has been posted. It isn't in effect. We just want to let you know ahead of time that this will go into effect. You know, tornadoes are a huge part of hurricanes. A lot of times the storms are spawn tornadoes, so that's something we certainly have to watch out for. Storm surge. It will be especially bad on just north of where the eye moves on shore. So this is where we think the highest storm surge will occur. We're talking about a possibility of 16-foot storm surge along the coast here. The latest radar picture, look closely. You can start to see it almost looks like the eye is starting to show up right here in our radar picture. That's where it will start to come into the picture very, very soon. The squally weather rotating out and around the center of our storm, and they're already getting some rain and some gusty winds along the coast. The worst, though, certainly is offshore. So that's what we have. Again, the hurricane force winds extend out 145 miles from the center of circulation, mainly on the north and east sides of this powerful, powerful Category 3 storm. Highest strike probability right here, right along the border of North Carolina and South Carolina. Of course, it could still wobble, but this is the highest chance at this point. Well, stay tuned, because coming up in a minute, we'll go live to the Forecast Center. We'll update you. We'll have some updates from our crews out in the field. Stay tuned. We'll be coming back in a minute.
Under Clinton, stagnant wages, the largest tax increase in history, 2 incomes needed to make ends meet. Americans deserve better.
Make no mistake about it. My economic program is the right policy for America.
The Dole Plan, cut wasteful spending, balance the budget. A tax cut of $1,600 for the typical family.
You shouldn't have to apologize for wanting to keep what you earn. It's your money.
Bob Dole, the better man for a better America.
We're here with Vlad the Impaler.
How you doing?
Who's still in the dark ages and won't switch to Gladlock zipper bags.
I'm an old-fashioned guy.
Well, Vladster, what if we reupholster your coffin here with this garlic soup in either your bag or the Gladlock bag with the yellow and blue make green seal? Your bag doesn't have a green seal.
Yeah. Why resist progress? Use the Gladlock.
When it really counts, no pun intended. Get Gladlock. Now, let's talk thick, juicy steaks.
Let's not.
How about chops?
All right, that's good. That chops is
Gladlock zipper bags with the yellow and blue make green seal. When you see green, you know it's closed. Only from Gladlock.
Good morning. You have plaque. Just scratch a tooth to see. Alarmed? That film is plaque, where germs grow while you sleep. So wake up and remove it before you brush with advanced formula plaque.
And now it's time for the Michelin Drivers Report, brought to you by Michelin and your participating Michelin dealers.
Our Michelin trouble spot today, yes, you guessed it. We're watching you in the Carolinas and Virginia. Flooding certainly a possibility as our storm moves on shore. Heavy rain. Here's the latest satellite picture with the radar included, and you can certainly see the track of the storm as it's been moving off to the north-northeast over the last 24 hours or so. Do we have a picture of that? We can check it out and show you. That's all right. Look at the bigger picture, and again, we're watching out for flooding and rain and also the threat for strong storms. Some of the storms could be severe as well, so we'll have to watch out for severe weather and the high winds later on this afternoon and tonight. And this watch, by the way, has been put into effect. It goes into effect at 1 o'clock this afternoon, so just keep this in mind. Oftentimes, these type of storms will spawn tornadoes, so we'll let you know if there are any warnings for your neck of the woods, and we'll scroll all the information on your hometown screens. Stay tuned. We'll go live to the Forecast Center next.
Presenting the ultimate tire for your sport utility vehicle, the Michelin LTX.
Michelin's technological advances in sidewall and tread design give it a smoother, quieter ride than you might ever expect from a 4x4 tire. Yet it's rugged enough, tough enough, Michelin enough to get you through anything. The LTX series from Michelin.
Find Michelin tires at this dealer near you because so much is riding on your tires.
Coming up on a special edition of WeatherScope, the latest on Hurricane Fran, right after your local forecast. This is a special edition of WeatherScope, comprehensive coverage of Hurricane Fran from the Weather Channel.
Well, Hurricane Fran continues to bear down on the southeast coast on this Thursday, and if Fran maintains its speed and movement, direction of movement, it could very well make landfall somewhere coastal Carolinas, particularly the northeast South Carolina, southeast North Carolina coastline sometime tonight. Let's get the latest position on Fran for those of you following the storm, and we know a lot of you are tracking Fran with us. 31.5 north, 77.4 west. That puts the center as of 11 o'clock Eastern Time, 170 miles south-southeast of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Maximum winds 115. It's a Category 3 hurricane. North-northwest is the movement. It's increased its forward speed a bit. Fran now moving to the north-northwest at 16, and the pressure about the same as it was earlier, 954 millibars. In just a second, we have some updated hurricane watches and warnings, and I'll be filling you in on that graphically. And we have some satellite pictures of Fran to show you what's going on in just a bit. First stop, though, as we always do, we go live to the scene of the action. And we're going to check in later with Jeff Morrow. We also have Jim Cantore at Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, with the latest position report, latest weather conditions in that vicinity. Let's go on to the satellite picture. I want to take a look at that and show you what's going on. This is, of course, the colorized, enhanced view, the center of the...
Nothing runs like a deer.
For more information about John Deere lawn and garden equipment, contact your local John Deere dealer.
And now it's time for the Michelin Drivers Report, brought to you by Michelin and your participating Michelin dealers.
Well, here's the biggest understatement of the week. It's going to be windy and rainy in North Carolina and Virginia tonight, and parts of South Carolina, too. Flood watches cover about the entire state of North Carolina, back to Florence and Myrtle Beach, where winds are gusting over 50 miles per hour at the present time. Virginia bracing for some heavy rain, as is parts of West Virginia and Maryland. This just over the next 12 hours, and it's going to last beyond that, too. Here in the west, we've got scattered showers, and near a frontal boundary, more severe weather in the Dakotas, more hail and possible tornadoes. As a matter of fact, a severe thunderstorm watch is in effect for Rapid City and around Wounded Knee here, Oglala Sioux country in South Dakota and down into the sandhills of Nebraska. Meanwhile, in North Carolina and parts of South Carolina, it's Hurricane Fran that may spawn a few tornadoes. The eye is making landfall right now, the northern edge of the eye. And further out here in the Atlantic, approaching the Northeast Caribbean. By Saturday is Tropical Depression number 8. This could be Tropical Storm Hortense. Probably will be. But the big story right now is what's hitting the United States in North Carolina. It's Hurricane Fran, and we've got the latest coming up next.
Presenting the ultimate tire for your sport utility vehicle, the Michelin LTX. Michelin's technological advances in sidewall and tread design give it a smoother, quieter ride than you might ever expect from a 4x4 tire. Yet it's rugged enough, tough enough, Michelin enough to get you through anything. The LTX series from Michelin.
Find Michelin tires at this dealer near you, because so much is riding on your tires.
Coming up on a special edition of WeatherScope, the latest on Hurricane Fran, right after your local forecast. This is a special edition of WeatherScope, comprehensive coverage of Hurricane Fran from the Weather Channel.
Hurricane Fran has made landfall tonight, and Jill Brown from the Weather Channel is now in the eye of the hurricane. I'm joined by John Hope, our tropical storm specialist. Let's go right into the thick of things. Jill, tell us what you are experiencing right now as you're in the eye of Hurricane Fran.
Well, Mike, we are in Brunswick County in Bolivia, and we've been sitting here at the Emergency Operations Center in a big garage area. We're on the south side of the building, so we've been blocked from the wind. But we're inside the garage. The garage doors on the other side have been rattling like crazy. Now, they'll say they withstand about 120 mile-per-hour winds, so they lifted them a little bit to let the wind come through. But all of a sudden, we're sitting there and we realize there's no rattle, there's no wind. So we came outside and checked it out, and now people are on both the north and the south side of the building coming out to just kind of see what it's like in the eye of the hurricane. There's a little bit of drizzle. The trees behind me are perfectly still. There's really no wind at all. And as is typical, it's warm, it's humid. It's noticeably warmer than it was earlier.
Well, Jill, that's the warmest air in the hurricane is in that eye wall, or in the eye, so it always feels very warm and very humid. And what about if you look up? Can you see any breaks in the clouds at all?
Well, I don't see much up there at the moment. Actually, I can see the top of the tower, though, with the lights, which I don't think I could see earlier. It's just the classic. It's exactly what you expect, I guess. And even earlier, as I mentioned, you could hear that roar that in Hurricane Aaron we had kind of listened for. It was a little bit weaker hurricane, and you could hear a little bit. But when I walked out here earlier, I couldn't believe it. We were looking around to see what in the world is that. It's the roar of the hurricane, which we're not hearing now, which I guess as the eye wall gets closer, we should start to hear that again. Is that right, John?
That's right. You can't hear it at all because that eye wall can't be very far from you. I'm a little bit surprised you can't hear it as it goes away. You can't, though?
I'm not hearing anything at the moment.
Well,
sometimes if you step a little bit back from the building, you can hear a little bit more, but it's quiet, it's calm, it feels pretty good out here, but people should know that, you know, this is, if by some freak of nature they still had cable and could see this, they would realize that when you're in the eye, you stay put because it doesn't last long.
Well, Jill, this eye is about 20 miles or so wide, so if you go over if the widest part of the eye goes over you, it might be more than an hour before you hear the winds coming back from the opposite side.
Of course, if we're closer to the edge, it could be a much shorter period of time,
Yes, it could be shorter.
Joe, I got a question for you. When the wind subsided, how quickly did that roar go away? Because we often have seen in films and on videos that it seems like the wind just drops off very quickly. Is that what you experienced there in the eye wall of Fran?
It did happen pretty quickly. We were inside the building where you can't hear it as well, but it did, you know, it's kind of all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? It's so quiet. So I called you, you checked, we didn't think that we could be in the eye wall yet. We're about 18 miles from the coast, but apparently we are. We waited to see if it just momentarily had diminished, but that's not the case. It's been a good 5 minutes, 10 minutes possibly.
But as you stand there, you're not getting any wind at all?
No wind at all, and there's hardly any rain. I can just see a couple little drizzles. You probably can't really even see it much.
I'll bet you got a several degree temperature rise. You didn't bring a thermometer up there with you, did you?
No, that's probably a good idea for next time. It's definitely noticeably warmer and humid because earlier it was actually a little chilly. I have a jacket on. Now it's hot and sticky. It's definitely the core of this hurricane.
Can you, do you have any trees around where you are? Can you see if you have any trees down or limbs blown off?
Right through here, there are trees on the backside of this parking lot. They're all standing perfectly still. We didn't see any come down right through here, but in one of the other buildings close by, they had mentioned there were trees down, and they were going to have to go and try and move them because a lot of the equipment was in there. And 911 operator that's here. There's the Coast Guard here, National Guard, Health Department, Red Cross. Well, the 911 operator came out and talked to me a little while ago and said they've gotten reports in of trees down on homes, trees over roadways, a lot of things that they can't do much about just yet. They're probably just going to have to wait until Fran completely goes on by before they can get out to help these people with things like that.
Jill, just a question about the wind direction now. What side of the building are you on?
We were on the south side of the building, so we were really blocked. The winds were coming from the north or northeast, and we could see everything, you know, blowing away from us here. And we were in a great position here to be blocked from all of that, but still be able to see everything. So now as it comes back in, it'll be coming from the south. Is that right?
Right, south or southwest.
South or southwest. So you should feel the wind coming right in at you, I would say, in the next 15 to 20 minutes?
Well,
maybe next half an hour.
Depending on what part of the eye goes over. If it's the widest part of the eye, it might take more than an hour.
Because it's moving at about 16 miles an hour, and you said the width of the eye was 20 miles, so it could be more than an hour if you're right in the center. Jill, right now we're looking at the Doppler radar, and you're a few miles inland, and we're looking at some very, very heavy rain bands off to your north, northeast, and northwest, but there's a nice clear spot near the coast, so obviously you're on the fringe of the eye wall of Hurricane Fran, or the eye of Hurricane Fran, rather.
I'm glancing up to see if we see any stars, but I guess it's maybe not quite so clear right over where we are right here in Brunswick County. But again, yeah, we had so much heavy rain earlier that we couldn't even get a picture out. Satellite, we just couldn't get to the satellite and get back to you. But now, no problem.
Well, Bolivia, just to update our viewers where that is, that's just down Highway 17, John, from Wilmington, about 12, 15 miles. And Wilmington, in the past hour, has picked up 89/100ths of an inch of rain, almost an inch of rain in an hour. And so far, Jill, they have picked up 4 inches of rain in Wilmington today. Last hour, an 86-mile-an-hour wind gust.
We've had reports of wind gusts close by here over 100 miles per hour. I think sustained 105, I think is what you were saying earlier here in Brunswick County. On our way over, we saw a lot of ponds where there shouldn't be ponds. Definitely several inches of rain. It was really coming down heavier and heavier through the late afternoon and early evening hours, and it's just so quiet now. it's hard to believe that within maybe a few minutes to a half hour or so, it's going to be right back to where we were.
And obviously it's quiet. We just saw a bird fly behind you, and obviously the birds have sensed some change in the wind speed and wind direction.
Sometimes you get a lot of birds in the eye. You don't see a lot more birds around there, do you, Jill?
I don't really see any at the moment. I'm looking around a little bit. I know you mentioned before that the birds will get into the eye of the hurricane and just follow it. And when we were in Annen, we saw the birds, we could hear them. Again, the sun came out. Of course, now you don't have that luxury since it's at night, and you can't really see how nice and quiet it is. You're just going to, I guess, have to take my word for it.
Jill, what can you tell us about Brunswick County as far as maybe emergency preparations, the number of shelters? Obviously, everybody has heeded the warnings about Hurricane Fran.
Yes, they really have. They're pretty much used to it. Of course, Bertha came through here, a weaker hurricane, not too long ago. They do have 4 shelters open. This is not actually a shelter, but some folks that drove by and saw it stopped, and of course they're welcome to come in. But out of the 4 shelters that they do have, they have about 1,700 people in there, and each of the shelters has a paramedic. They have someone in charge of food. They have someone from Parks and Recreation in charge of games for the kids. They have a staff of about 6. I'm not sure of exactly who all of them are. One of them, I believe, a sheriff deputy. They're very well prepared. We're pretty impressed, and I think the folks that are there, I think, are probably comfortable and ready to wait out this storm.
Well, Joe, we'll be anxious to find out how long your calm lasts there, so you need to keep good track of it for us.
Okay, we will. We'll probably be back with you, I guess, in about 20 minutes or so.
Okay, Jill, and we may get back to you sooner if we hear from you that the other side of the eye wall has come on through. That's Jill Brown reporting live from Bolivia, North Carolina, in the eye wall of Hurricane Fran. Pretty amazing stuff, John.
Nice to see somebody that's not being bashed around by the wind.
At least
rain.
Right now.
Right.
Obviously, that will change because the eye is the calm part of the storm. In fact, in the daytime, often the sun comes out.
Yeah, so I imagine had it been in the daytime, you could see the sun peeking through those thin clouds. She said there was very light drizzle. This is often typical. So sometimes you don't really see any clouds much in the eye, but then again you see some low clouds.
Okay, let's show you the latest now, the satellite imagery of Hurricane Fran, and you can see the fact that the eye is now just edged on shore there in southeastern North Carolina in the Brunswick, Hanover County, rather New Hanover County area. That is certainly the worst of it. That's where the worst damage will likely be, along and to the right of center. And I should let you know that Wilmington is not exactly right on the coast, and that's why their winds have only gusted so far to 86 miles an hour. But down on those beaches, we've had unofficial reports of wind gusts in excess of 120 miles an hour from Hurricane Fran, a Category 3 hurricane. John, here's a closer perspective, and already some of those heavy feeder bands feeding into western North Carolina. That is going to be the other story, right?
They have gone up there pretty fast, and what we're concerned about and are going to be more and more concerned about as time goes by is the rainfall associated with this. A hurricane, when it goes over land, begins to weaken. Every hurricane does that. But the rain continues, and if this moisture, the remnants of the hurricane come up over the mountains, which we think this is going to do, the mountains are going to help the rainfall. So some very heavy amounts of rainfall, especially on the eastern slopes of the mountains.
Yeah, the orographic effect sometimes can really add more rainfall,
they can add a lot.
that additional lifting. Yeah. And I think we saw that with Agnes. We don't want to compare this to Agnes certainly at this point, but when we talk about the mountainous areas of the Virginias, I know parts of West Virginia back in '72 picked up 22 to 25 inches of rain from Agnes, which at that point was several days after landfall.
Right, and I'm sure people up in West Virginia and Pennsylvania and Virginia don't want to hear anything about Agnes.
Certainly not, especially places like the Wyoming Valley. Again, we want to show you the Doppler radar, and John, tell us a little bit about what you see here as Fran is on shore now in southeastern North Carolina.
Well, you can see that part of the eye is certainly on shore, and Jill obviously there at Bolivia was in the eye of the hurricane since he went down to calm, but it'll take the whole eye some time to pass all of it inland, but a portion of it is inland even as we speak.
Okay, that is roughly, that white dot is roughly where Jill Brown is. Now, granted, there may be a few mile deviation in the map over the grid map over the precipitation, or the precipitation over the grid map, so we're not talking about down to the foot here, but roughly speaking, that's where Jill Brown is. You can see the eye wall now spinning on shore and those heavier rain bands to the north.
Well, Jill Brown is at ground zero, and if she says she's in the eye and has calm winds, she is in the eye.
We're going to buy that and go with that. Now, also want to notice to the north that hurricane warnings extend as far as the North Carolina-Virginia border. But again, the real problems tonight are in New Hanover County and Brunswick County, and part of the story has been Wrightsville Beach. Our very own Jim Cantore is standing by there, John, right now, and again, with those winds there gusting over 100 miles an hour, we cannot broadcast live, but we can get Jim on the phone. Jim, we just talked to Jill Brown. She is in the eye wall. Fran, how about the weather there? Have you experienced the eye wall, or is it still storming?
You know, that's amazing. I'm probably about 6.5 to maybe 7 miles from where Jill is, and we are still getting hammered here. If anything, winds are perhaps a little bit more southerly at this point, but I mean, nothing has let up. The rain, the wind, the gusts. I mean, we haven't seen any kind of decrease in the wind here.
And the fact that the winds are from the south, what does that mean, John, as far as the storm and its track?
Well, the fact that Jim says the wind is still very strong there and also becoming more southerly is leading me to wonder if he's actually going to get in the eye. The eye might be a little bit to the west.
So it may actually come right up over Wilmington.
Right, right.
And
closer to Wilmington, I believe.
Jim?
Yeah.
Okay.
Since we talked to you last, we did step outside to observe some of the overwash, which has really been a huge problem here. I mean, I can't imagine what it's going to be like tomorrow. I mean, for 2 days there has been very heavy rain in eastern North Carolina, and I think a lot of these rivers and the tributaries have just been filling these bays and get rid of some of this water. But as high tide came in today, it wasn't so bad. But it's almost like the tide never went back out. It never really went back out, and a lot of this is just overwash. Right here in the hotel, Mike, at this time, we are almost 180 degrees to 260 degrees surrounded by water.
And how about the winds themselves right now? You estimated gust earlier about 100 miles an hour. Is that basically where they stand right now, based on your estimation?
They may be a little less than that. I mean, it doesn't seem as ferocious as it was. I mean, the gustiness of the wind seems to be letting up a little bit, but it's still, no doubt, cranking a hurricane force.
Okay, Jim, stay dry there. We'll keep you certainly in our thoughts, and we'll be back with you certainly in the next half an hour. That's Jim Cantore live on the phone because of the high winds there in Wrightsville Beach. We have the 9 o'clock update in. Let's pass it over to John. He can take a look at it as we, meanwhile, go to Jeff Morrow, the Weather Channel's Jeff Morrow, standing by live now, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Myrtle Beach, fortunately, getting off the hook this time, right, Jeff?
I'm sorry, Mike, could you repeat that question?
Sure, Jeff. I was saying that you're pretty much getting off the hook this time, getting off pretty easy compared to areas to your north and east.
Yeah, and I think a lot of folks here breathing a sigh of relief, not that anybody's wishing any harm on anybody, the fact that it's going up through the Wilmington area once again this year. But the Grand Strand definitely, they're happy here that the storm missed this area. And kind of a double good deal here was that the wind was offshore. With the hurricane tracking to the east, of course, we being on the western side of it, had more of a northerly wind component for much of the day, and then it switched to northwest, and it has stayed that way all day, even during the time of high tide when the surf was the highest. So we had the surf come up to about the dune line here, and there isn't much of one, but it never really did overwash, and we haven't had any reports of any overwash. That usually is the biggest fear with a hurricane, is the water, and we really have not had a problem with that. We've had plenty of rain. Wind's finally starting to back off here a little bit, Mike, and it looks like hopefully we might be able to get a live shot, a television shot to you here before too long, hopefully in the next hour.
And Jeff, you mentioned earlier just a bit of damage so far you've seen.
Yeah, just a little bit of damage. What we are seeing is a lot of transformers blowing out, I guess under the tremendous wind pressure. I mean, we had the windows actually blown out in our van here not too long ago, about an hour or two ago, but the transformers are going, and when they go at night here, it's a tremendous blue flash that you see. Fortunately, the power in our hotel is still on, but I'm afraid some areas of Myrtle Beach have lost power tonight.
Okay, Jeff, we'll be certainly back in touch with you throughout this evening. Jeff Morrow live from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. One spot which is getting off pretty easy along with Charleston because of the winds blowing offshore. John, what is the latest from the Hurricane Center? This is our 9 o'clock update.
Okay, we have the 9 o'clock update, and the center of the Hurricane Fran was located at that time at 33.9, 78.0, or that is near Southport in North Carolina. I just looked at the map there, and that's about perhaps 10 miles from where Jill Brown is, so the eye is there too. So the eye has come ashore, so we can definitely state at this time that the eye of Hurricane Fran has come ashore in North Carolina.
Okay, and Jill Brown, we joined her at the top of the hour in the eye of Hurricane Fran. I don't know if we've ever seen this live on television, but it's happening tonight. Jill Brown, we go back to you in Bolivia, North Carolina. Jill, what's the latest on Fran?
Well, John and Mike, no real change since last time we talked to you. A little bit of drizzle coming down. Things are nice and calm here. My producer, Tim Witt, and our truck operator outside, they keep telling me a lot of birds flying around through here, and it's definitely warm. We're ready to take our jackets off again. It's that warm and humid, sticky center of the hurricane for sure.
Mike, I don't think this is quite a first. I think Jill was in the eye of Hurricane Annen last year. Isn't that right, Jill?
Yes, that is right.
Okay, Jill, I apologize. I knew you were on the phone, but I wasn't sure if we were able to broadcast from the eye of Annen.
Maybe we did. Did we broadcast live?
We did broadcast from the eye of Annen. It was during the day,
yeah, that's right. I
better.
remember we did.
Okay, I stand corrected. The second time here at the Weather Channel. Jill, what about the people around there? Are they kind of, is there a sense of jubilation or excitement? Because this is something that probably only happens once in a lifetime, if that.
Yeah, that is true. Everybody opened the doors. They're going outside, looking around to see what it's like to be in the eye, kind of wandering around there, letting the dogs come out, and they have a few of them around here, a few people hovering about. And I suspect as it starts coming in quickly, everyone's going to be running for cover. We're going to have to bring down the garage doors again because the garage doors face north and south. And so the wind really howls through there, and we got a chance to open them. They stopped rattling for a little while. That was our real first indication that all of a sudden we were in the eyes. It got so quiet inside. And outside, as John, you told me, we should be able to hear the roar as it starts coming in again. We're not hearing anything yet. And again, it's just drizzling lightly, and the winds haven't picked up at all yet.
And the birds, and you mentioned earlier, or I saw a bird earlier mentioned just a minute ago about the birds flying around, and John Hope has certainly mentioned that that is often the case because the birds try to stay in safe haven and they just follow that eye on shore.
That's right. It looks like they're definitely following it right over Bolivia and Brunswick County.
I've seen pictures of down in the Caribbean on a ship during the hurricane, and the ship was literally just loaded with birds. There was a bird perched every place a bird could get on the ship in the eye of a hurricane.
Really? Jill Brown, we want you to stand by there. We're going to be checking back with you certainly in the next 10 to 15 minutes, and maybe by that time you may start to hear the roar as the other end of the eye approaches her and she gets back into those gusty and very strong hurricane force winds from the opposite direction, from the south and southeast.
Now watch out that you're sheltered there. Remember the wind will be the opposite direction.
I was just thinking that we're probably going to have to switch to the other side of the building, so we'll have to start thinking about that. We might have to do it pretty quickly.
I think you want to do that.
Okay, Jill, stay safe there. We'll be back with you in the next 10 to 15 minutes. Jill Brown in the eye of Hurricane Fran. And that is the second time we have broadcasted live from a hurricane, Annen last year and Fran this year. And we will be back with Jill in the next 10 minutes, about 9:30 Eastern. I want to get you updated now on the other part of the story, now that the Fran is making a run at Wilmington, North Carolina, and certainly the Brunswick County area, that a tornado watch is up for a good deal of eastern North Carolina and northeastern South Carolina. And as John has mentioned, the highest threat area with those tornadoes comes once the hurricane makes landfall.
Once it makes landfall, that's when we have to watch out. We rarely see tornadoes as the hurricane is approaching, but after the eye comes in, that is when we begin to see them, if they're going to occur. We hope they don't occur at all.
But most tornadoes with a hurricane are usually F0 or F1 on the Fujita scale. Another scale we talk about with severe weather from 0 to 5, 5 being the strongest, but an F0, F1 is a tornado not compared to the major ones we see in the plains and Tornado Alley.
Once in a great while you get a stronger one, but for the most part they're not.
So watch out for that. And also the rainfall. We've got the Doppler radar estimate loaded up. Let's show you that right now. And this is incredibly impressive, John. Now this is an estimate. Granted, this isn't exact, but Doppler radar, what a great tool we have now in the 90s to show you this tool here. And it's adding up the rainfall. You can see how the rainfall, John, and those of you at home, is adding up off to the north of the center, or the eye of Hurricane Fran. And see these pink colors? By the way, offshore, you can't read the number over here, but I'll tell you, that pink area, that brighter area just offshore south of Myrtle Beach, 14.5 inches.
Well, again, Mike, I want to remind everybody that tomorrow, the eye of this hurricane will be ashore, the seas will be subsiding, the tides will be going down. But the rainfall, then, I'm afraid, is going to be the big problem, and that's going to spread northward and it's going to spread up into the mountain states and does certainly create a potential for some flooding.
And John, already in southeastern parts of, rather southwestern parts of Brunswick County, that circled area, based on the scale, an estimated 10 to 12 inches of rain around the Longwood and Seaside area and over towards Thomasboro. These are towns just east and northeast of North Myrtle Beach along Highway 17. So those coastal areas, John, have already been clobbered. And with more rain coming in, some of these totals may add up to 15 to 16 inches of rainfall.
And again, we remind the folks that these are estimates. We'll have to see what the measured amounts
the official reports are in the morning.
Turn out to be.
Many amateur weather prognosticators out there with rain gauges. We want to go back now to Jim Cantore. He's standing by live in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. Jim is on the phone. Jim, any update now in the past 10 minutes? Are you still getting the strong winds, or have you experienced the eye of Fran?
Yes, Mike, we are here. As a matter of fact, there's some real interesting happenings here in the last 10 minutes or so. The overwash is so bad from this bay here that some of the sailboats, some of the smaller sailboats, are actually beginning to wash down the street in front of this hotel. I mean, these are, smaller craft boats. Already we saw some of the barricades that the police had that were heading back over toward Wrightsville Beach. These boats are coming back from the waterfront.
And what about the damage around the hotel? Have you seen any flying debris over the past half an hour or so as those winds have been gusting over hurricane force?
Most of the damage was a little bit earlier on, probably about an hour ago, where we had some pretty powerful limbs snapped off, a lot of leaves, and there's a tremendous smell of pine in the air. I don't know where that's coming from. Perhaps, the pine trees are the limbs that are snapping at the present time.
We got the light out there?
We're just kind of getting some new information on this, but I mean, I can look out the window. There's a police cruiser right across the hotel here. He's above the water. He's on the bridge, but he's got his lights shining on these boats. There's several of them that are just kind of sitting there against the road.
So these boats have, sounds like, have been torn away from their moorings and have been beached against the bridge. Is that what it sounds like there?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Or they don't look like they're against the bridge. They're kind of away from the bridge, over almost toward the road here.
Are these sailboats or are these big cruise liners? I mean, I don't mean the time you take a cruise on, but the big vessels 40 or 50 feet.
No, these look like about 20 feet, probably 25 feet.
Well, Jim, is the water lapping around around your building?
Yeah, John, it continues to come up. As a matter of fact, the truck is probably about 20 feet from the building, and the edge of the water is now up to the truck.
Well, do you think your truck is going to get inundated?
Well, I don't know, John. I'm kind of waiting for it to go down a little bit. We just continue to get these winds. I mean, they're not as strong as they were, but certainly still at hurricane force.
And they're not letting up at all. I think that you might not get in the eye wall there if that's the case. If your wind is already south and it comes around the southwest, that will mean that the eye will have passed to the west of where you are.
Well, it'd be nice if we got into that eye, certainly, but you think when these winds shift around maybe a little bit more toward the northwest that some of this overwash will stop?
It won't stop until the wind comes all the way around to the west.
Okay. Well, maybe at that point then we'll stop seeing this water rise, but until then, I mean, we've seen boats from their moorings. The water continues to rise around this hotel, and it's probably not too safe to drive in the street in front of us.
Don't forget, you're east of the eye of the hurricane, and you're in that area where the storm surge is going to be the highest. So what's happening now is the eye of the hurricane is coming ashore, and you're getting the maximum storm surge that will be associated with this hurricane right now.
Well, John, we are a mile inland. I can't imagine what it's like on some of those roads out toward the beach right now.
Well, you'll get a chance to see tomorrow, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe we will, but even with Bertha, there were reports of water that were 2 to 4 feet high the day after Bertha. So, I mean, I can't imagine what this has done.
Okay, Jim Cantore live from Wrightsville Beach, and just a little historical information. The last time Wilmington was hit directly by a hurricane, you'll probably remember this one, Hazel, back in 1954. That came in as a Cat 4, Category 4.
That was an October hurricane. That was a very devastating hurricane. It was certainly the most devastating one that ever hit North Carolina prior to Hurricane Hugo of 1989.
So we're dealing with a Category 3 tonight, Hurricane Fran, sustained winds of 115 miles an hour. You're watching the Weather Channel. We're continuing our live coverage. We've got Jill Brown in the eye of Hurricane Fran right now. We're going to try to go back to her in a few minutes. Also updating us, you just heard Jim Cantore from Wrightsville Beach in New Hanover County. And in Brunswick County, it's Jill Brown. And Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Jeff Morrow has been on the phone too. We're not able to go and get video from Jeff and Jim because of the seriousness of the situation. In fact, we just heard that Jim's live truck is in certainly some danger there of the water coming right up.
Well, I hope it doesn't get up there, but it's already lapping up around the truck, and I doubt if the tide is as high now there as it's going to be.
And certainly with the eye still right there near the coast and the winds coming in, we often talk about along and to the right of where the eye makes landfall. That's where you have the highest storm surge, because you not only have the wind whipping around. You notice the circulation. Let me show you here with a telestrator, or I can't telestrate it, but notice how the clouds are rolling around and whipping around, and they're circulating around this hurricane, Hurricane Fran, and they're rotating counterclockwise. So you've got the movement of the storm, and you add that component to the wind blowing on shore, so it's kind of like A plus B. And in the opposite sense, down around Myrtle Beach, over towards the left of your screen, we've got the winds blowing offshore, so it's like A minus B. So that's why we have it's like a double whammy situation, and that's why the storm surge is always worse around Wrightsville Beach. That's where Jim Cantore is. Now, the eye of Hurricane Fran has made landfall over the past half an hour. We've been talking to Jill Brown. She has certainly been in the thick of it. Earlier, she was in the building, and they have metal doors on the north side and the south side of this building in Bolivia, North Carolina. That's just down the road on 17 from Wilmington. And she was telling us that these doors were rattling because of the strong winds, and then all of a sudden the wind went away and everybody went outside. Birds flying around, which is, as you mentioned, very common in the eye of a hurricane.
It is. At first, I guess they were suspicious that it might just be a lull, but then they finally decided they were in the eye.
Certainly with the rain shutting off, and they are not able to see any breaks in the overcast. Of course, it is dark out, and with the light around the area, sometimes it's hard to see clearing. We're going to try to go back to Jill Brown here momentarily. I believe we can right now. Jill is now live again in the eye of Hurricane Fran. Jill, we talked to you about 10 minutes ago. What is the latest right now? Are the winds still calm, or have you been hit by the other side?
No, Mike and John, it's still nice and calm here. We're in Bolivia and Brunswick County. Now, we're at the Emergency Operations Center for the county, and I wanted to show you our setup here, because again, we were on the south side, right out here a few minutes ago. I'm in the garage now, and this is the north side. These garage doors in here, they're saying, will withstand about 120 mile-per-hour winds. So they lifted them a little bit to kind of let the air go through because they were rattling so loud. It was when they stopped rattling that we realized we're in the eye, went outside, looked around, and it's nice and quiet now. There's a little drizzle. We can see a few birds from time to time fly by, and interestingly enough, the lights are on still here, so I don't even think we've lost power, although much of the county has. And they're reporting a lot of tree damage around here, but so far that's about it.
Have you gotten any reports from the coastal areas? Because obviously some of those coastal areas over around Southport and Cape Fear are really getting hammered right now.
Well, we've had an unconfirmed report around Thompson Beach of some severe damage to the fire and police buildings, police department building. So again, unconfirmed, but that's the belief right now, that there's some problems there. What one of the police officers here, one of the EMS people was telling me that they think maybe we don't have quite as many trees down right around here because Bertha came through and knocked a lot of them down. So maybe some of the weaker trees went out, and the stronger trees, the more limber trees, made it through yet again.
Well, with all that rain that has fallen today, Jill, some areas just south and west of you, we were showing the Doppler radar estimate just a few minutes ago. John and I were looking at it, and Doppler radar estimates right now are showing up to a foot of rainfall so far, and even if that's overdone by 20%, we're still talking about 10 inches of rain. The ground is saturated, and we're showing, Jill, right now, the viewers at home, the radar, and with all this wet ground, that is just, boy, that is a perfect prescription with strong winds to get trees uprooted over power lines, and as we saw here in Atlanta from Opal, power can be out for days and days, although the power crews, you know, honestly work as hard as they can.
Mike,
go ahead, Jill.
I can hear that wind, I think, starting to come back in. Mike, are you hearing that? I think we're starting to hear maybe the beginning of that roar. So the eye wall may be coming back towards us.
I can't hear it in my ear. Jill, I can't hear it in my ear, but maybe the viewers have a better sense of it at home. Jill?
Shortly, you might be able to
So how long, Jill, have you been in the eye up to this point?
At this point, it has been about 40 minutes, I would say. 35, 40 minutes.
35, 40 minutes.
Okay, Jill.
So we pretty much stood right across the center, perhaps.
And you are going to the other side of the building?
We have not gone to the other side of the building. Again, we're wide open. We're going to have to go up to the other side over here in a few minutes as those winds start kicking in again. Still very calm. I'm looking out there. Almost looks like no rain. Maybe a little spits here and there.
So, Jill, right now you are facing south.
That's correct.
So the wind should be coming right in at you in the next few minutes if that roar
Pretty
increases.
soon they'll start coming in this way.
So
now we're hearing it.
I can hear something in the background. I think we want to stay with this because this should be pretty amazing television if we can get the sound out to the viewers and certainly the winds picking up as they whip on through. Once again, recapping, Jill standing in a fire station there. You can see the big doors behind her are open, and in front of her, in back of her camera and her photographer, the doors are also open, and now that the eye wall is coming on the back side of the eye, we're getting the other side of the eye wall, the winds will be coming in from the other side, from the south and southeast, and that should be very visible here in just a few minutes.
Can you still hear it, Jill?
I'm still here, yes. What is it, John?
Could you still hear the wind
can I still
coming
hear
back?
It? I can hear it. I'm hearing a little bit of a howl. What we might have to do as it starts picking up is close up here and move over because it's going to start blowing the lights over and blowing us around. And of course, we'll be in danger of some flying debris on this side. We don't have the building to block us at this point like we did earlier.
Okay, Jill, for safety reasons, we don't want to put you and the crew in harm's way. We want to get you a chance to move your crew and move yourself into a safer position, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as you get set back up. That's Jill Brown. She's reporting live tonight from the eye of Hurricane Fran in Bolivia, North Carolina. That's southwest of Wilmington. She's been in the eye for, what, 35 or 40 minutes, she mentioned?
About 40 minutes, she said.
She's been live for about 40 minutes. We're once again looking at the radar, and you can see the showers and thunderstorms continuing to really wrap around the northern fringe of the eye, in fact, around Wilmington and north and west of Wilmington, up 74, Highway 74 and 76, now into Columbus and Pender County. You are likely getting some of the worst weather you're going to see because that area right around the center where you see those bright colors, those reds and oranges, that is where you have the strongest winds. Meanwhile, the eye, as it makes landfall, as we showed you with Jill, the winds go away, the rain basically stops, the skies will clear, and as we saw briefly, we saw at least one bird in the picture, but they're reporting, our producer Tim Witt and Jill, the folks there reporting birds flying around, and John has explained, obviously, if you're a bird, you want to be in the area where there's no wind.
Well, the birds can't handle the eye wall of the hurricane. That's the hardest part of the hurricane, and they'd be blown to bits. But somehow or other, I'm not sure whether it's instinct or what it is, but they manage to get into the eye and go along with the hurricane.
Well, we just got word from Wilmington, North Carolina, that the winds there have shifted to the east-southeast, and they're now 35 knots, gusting to 56 knots. And earlier we had gusts over 80 knots. What can you tell us about the movement there of Fran and the eye wall?
Well, it sounds as if they're going around the east-southeast, they might be just on the very edge of the eye wall there with most of the eye off to the west.
Okay, I want to get Matt Crowther, our senior forecaster, to load in the radar out here so we can do some telestrating and give the viewers at home an idea where the eye wall is, those heavier rain bands, and John and I can kind of discuss what's going on as Fran has made landfall. Once again, you're watching the Weather Channel as we continue our Hurricane Fran coverage. We've got Jeff Morrow at Myrtle Beach. Jill Brown is in the eye of Hurricane Fran. We've been talking to her for about the past 40 minutes. We're going to go back to her in just a moment. What she is doing now is moving into a safer area. She's already hearing the roar of the wind from the back side of the eye wall, and once that moves back at her, she's going to be clobbered with heavy rain and wind. And Jim Cantore, has also been following the storm from Wrightsville Beach. The problem there is too much wind. The satellite truck is in the water, not totally in the water, but the water is lapping up to the truck, but the wind has precluded us from broadcasting, at least video-wise, from there. We're going to have Jim on the phone in just a minute. Back to Fran. Let's go back to the radar. I can show you what's going on here. And you can see, John, that the eye is now coming on around the Cape Fear area. And it looks like, unless the grid is a little off here, that you think Jim Cantore in Wrightsville Beach may just get on the fringe of this eye wall.
Well, he may not quite do it. It says the wind is still south, and it's east-southeast of Wilmington. He may never get in the eye.
And as I mentioned before, these areas here are just getting pounded all the way back into Horry County in South Carolina. Heavy rainfalls wrapping around all the way back to Conway, and still some pretty good rains around Myrtle Beach, but obviously the heavier rains now falling in North Carolina across Columbus and Pender County. If you're watching tonight from around Elizabethtown or Whiteville or East Arcadia, you know what we're talking about. That is hopefully if you've still got your power and your cable. Now up the coast in the sound areas, John, we're talking about an onshore wind here. How about the flooding over here and some of the sounds on the west side of the sounds?
Well, we're a little bit concerned about that, as you might imagine, because the wind is strong up there. It's from the east, and it could push the sound water back to the west and up some of those rivers. That even happened in Bertha, and I'm afraid it's going to happen again here.
Well, yesterday they evacuated Ocracoke Island at 5. That was a mandatory evacuation because of the low-lying area and the road gets covered over with water. It doesn't take much in that particular location.
Mike, if you take a close look at that eye there, I think you'll see that out over the water, the sky is basically clear. Now, back there in the portion where Jill is, those are evidently some low clouds with a little drizzle, and even though that doesn't appear clear, wind-wise, that is in the eye of the hurricane.
Jill is right about there.
Right there. That's why she can't see any stars or anything, because there are still some clouds there.
And we want to emphasize the Doppler radar is very sensitive, so even though you're seeing some green there where Jill is, that doesn't necessarily mean it's raining.
Right.
So once again, Hurricane Fran, the eye wall's on shore. We're going to be going back to Jill Brown momentarily. She's repositioning herself, a safer position in Bolivia, North Carolina and Brunswick County. Also, Jim Cantore joins us on the phone. We're going to try to go to Jim right now and see if he is available. Jim is on the phone from Wrightsville Beach. Not ready? Not quite ready with Jim Cantore. We'll get back to him. Let's talk a little bit about what's going to happen once Fran continues to make its move onshore and that heavy rainfall. We're seeing it now near the beaches, but it could be a very, very serious problem in the Appalachians where the ground is already saturated.
Well, in the first place, as it gets inland, Fran will weaken and weaken rapidly. As a matter of fact, on this last advisory at 9 o'clock, the top winds were down to 105 miles an hour. And they will diminish, but they won't diminish quickly enough. But what we expect to see some hurricane force winds in gusts extending about, say 100 miles inland. By the time the hurricane gets inland as much as 100 miles, I think we'll be down to a tropical storm. But the rainfall that's associated with it is not going to stop. And even after it gets down to a tropical storm or even a depression, we still expect to see very heavy rains in the mountainous areas of North Carolina and Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, and perhaps up into Pennsylvania as well.
Well, let's make that comparison to as far as Hurricane Hugo and last year Hurricane Opal. They were both moving much faster, and I think that's why Atlanta and Charlotte, Atlanta with Opal and Charlotte with Hugo, got those hurricane force wind gusts. But tonight we're seeing Fran moving slowly, so that's going to save a lot of people from maybe some destructive winds.
Yes, it will, because the winds won't extend as far inland as they did either in Hugo or in Opal. But the downside of all this is that the fact that it moves slowly is going to give the rain more of a chance to be prolonged.
And as I mentioned earlier, some areas have already had just a load of rainfall in the Appalachians. Even in those areas of eastern North Carolina yesterday, 4 to 6 inches of rain, and you throw on another foot of rainfall, and that means the flooding is very likely. We have flash flood watches out, and the story into the weekend will be the mountains of western North Carolina and West Virginia, because the track right now is projected to take what's left of Fran into West Virginia. Now that could change, but that is the track now from the National Hurricane Center.
Right. That looks pretty good to me. I think it'll move certainly in that general direction.
Let's go back to the radar and show you what's going on from the, well, there's the big blue planet, and we can really show you on here, just give you an idea, because we have something else going on. Let's keep that up right now because we have something else going on. John, while we're waiting to get Jill and Jim back here with us live, let's take a look at what's going on out over the Atlantic, because we have a new tropical depression, and that is certainly something else we've been watching very closely today for our viewers out in the Caribbean.
That is a tropical depression, and it's forecast to actually be a tropical storm, but looking at it tonight, I don't see that it's getting organized very rapidly, so perhaps we have a little time to watch it still.
But you know, you look at this, you're looking at the entire western hemisphere, and your eye immediately goes right in on Hurricane Fran right there, taking up a good chunk of territory north of the equator.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, let's come back here to the show, here to the set, and let's talk a little bit more about Fran. We're trying to get Jim Cantore on the phone, and as soon as we hear from Jim, we'll get back to him in Wrightsville Beach. Also, Jill Brown is from Hurricane Fran, in the eye of Hurricane Fran, near Bolivia, North Carolina, and that is in Brunswick County, southeast of Wilmington. We mentioned Wilmington has not had a direct hit since 1954. What were some of the, if you remember back to 1954 with Hazel, some of the cleanup and some of the destruction that occurred in that area, because Wilmington is not right on the beach?
Well, there was just tremendous devastation throughout the whole area. The beach communities were pretty well wiped out. Most of the boating piers along that whole stretch were wiped out, and the damage was very, very serious. Now, Hugo, or Hazel rather, was moving very rapidly. It was moving probably 50 miles an hour after it got out of North Carolina, so the rain wasn't that much of a problem down there, even though by the time it got up into Canada, up into Ontario, they had tremendous amounts of rain there. But Hazel rather, was maintained its strength all up through the mid-Atlantic states. I don't think they ever had a stronger hurricane, for example, go up through the middle of Pennsylvania. There was enormous damage up there in the woods and so on. And this is because it was moving very rapidly.
Well, I know growing up in Maryland, my parents often talk about Hurricane Hazel around the Ocean City area and Salisbury area because it was hit pretty hard, even back inland by 30 miles.
And Washington, D.C. was hit hard, too.
Okay, now let's go back to the satellite loop. We'll show you where the eye of Hurricane Fran is right now, and we've got an update from Wilmington, and as of 9:34, the winds now have dropped off. 9 o'clock, the winds were east at 58 miles an hour, John, gust to 86, and as of 9:34, which is about 7 minutes ago, 9:34 Eastern time, the winds have dropped off from 58 to 27. So obviously the eye wall may be drawing closer to the city of Wilmington.
But it appears, though, that the wind is shifting into southeast, that they may be right on the edge of the eye wall. It's not clear that they'll get entirely in the eye since they're still gusting to 48 miles an hour and the wind is shifted to southeast. That tells us that the eye is off just to the west of Wilmington.
And you can see where I've circled, you can see that white dot now on shore. Jill Brown is in that area in Bolivia, North Carolina, in the eye. And Raleigh-Durham now, that's back in the interior. That's back here in the Triad area. You can see the brighter colors here in the infrared picture, the reds and oranges, indicating the higher or colder cloud tops. And we are talking about some heavy rain there. And John, the winds have gusted there pretty significantly already, too.
Already to 41 miles an hour, and the strongest winds are not up there yet.
And likely with those high winds in Raleigh and the Durham area, Chapel Hill, in through the Rocky Mount area and Goldsboro and up towards Roxborough and Oxford, you're probably going to have some of the same problems those of us experienced here in Atlanta last year with Hurricane Opal. High winds, blowing down trees, and power outages, the big problem. Also, the likelihood as you move north and west of Raleigh-Durham over towards the hilly areas and certainly into the mountainous areas of western North Carolina and up through the Shenandoah Valley, Virginia, just a lot of rainfall and a lot of flooding.
Well, we hope it won't be too bad, but we're very apprehensive about that.
Okay, let's take a quick look at the radar. We'll get once again Matt Crowther to get the radar loaded up here and take a look again at the intensity of the hurricane, Hurricane Fran, making landfall just in the past hour. If you're just tuning in, you're watching the Weather Channel as we continue our Hurricane Fran coverage, making landfall south of Wilmington around the Cape Fear area, and now the eye is on shore. Sustained winds 115 miles an hour. We've had reports of gusts to as high as 124 miles an hour. Rainfall at 1 inch an hour already in Wilmington, almost 4 inches now, over 4 inches of rain with Hurricane Fran. And we still don't have any reports, certainly, of storm surge because obviously the beaches were cleared well in advance of Hurricane Fran. A Category 3, not as dangerous as Hugo, which was a Category 4, which hammered Charleston and the Isle of Palms and those areas back in the third week of September back in 1989 with winds sustained, I believe, John, sustained winds when Hugo made landfall, correct me if I'm wrong, 140 miles an hour.
It was about 140, 135 or 140. It was a Category 4.
And we're certainly going to be watching Fran very closely because once it makes landfall, we're going to have to deal with not only the heavy rainfalls, the risk of some tornadoes, and the accompanying flooding we've been talking about all evening long.
That's right, and of course, as we have been saying all evening, by tomorrow, the ongoing story will be, well, of course, the story will be the damage done by Fran on the coast, but the ongoing story will be the heavy rain inland.
And once again, let's go back to the latest with Hurricane Fran. This is a 9 o'clock update. We haven't shown you this in a while. We wanted to get it out to you because I know a lot of you are watching with your hurricane tracking charts across the country and down through the Caribbean. This is Fran's coordinates as of 9 from the National Hurricane Center, 33.9 north, 78.0 west. And that puts it at 25 miles south-southwest of Wilmington, North Carolina. Winds now are down to 105 miles an hour, so I need to update that. I had just said 115. I apologize. 105 miles an hour. Now moving north at 16, John, and the pressure 956. We'll have another update, though, in about 15 minutes around 10.
We might point out to the viewers that now straight north, not northwest as it was.
So that could bring the center at least up over or just to the west of Wilmington itself.
I think it's very close. The very fact that Wilmington has shifted into southeast and is still windy enough makes me think that they might not quite get in the eye of Wilmington or Wrightsville Beach.
Right, that's right, and that's where Jim Cantore is. We're going to be going to Jim Cantore very shortly. We're having some problems tonight, obviously because of the hurricane, onshore Hurricane Fran in North Carolina. A lot of wind has precluded us from getting out a picture, at least from Wrightsville Beach and Myrtle Beach. Myrtle Beach, a totally different situation. I think a lot of people in South Carolina were very concerned yesterday because a lot of people were around just 7 years ago with Hugo, and they remembered how Hugo was, and they certainly took the warnings very seriously.
Well, I'm sure they were very concerned. We were very concerned for South Carolina at this time yesterday.
That's true, and fortunately, Charleston has dodged the bullet with an offshore. Very much so. Yeah. Even Myrtle Beach, we were talking to Jeff Morrow just in the past hour. You've had a lot of wind. In case you have beachfront property there, you're going to be in pretty good shape. The water has been lapping at the sand dunes, but that is it. Once again, the lucky thing here is the tide has been going out. And he saw a little bit of damage, but other than some wind damage, I think a lot of you are going to be happy when you get back to the beaches if you have beachfront property, that you're going to be okay anywhere east of Highway 17. At least nothing serious to report at this point there in South Carolina. Totally different story though up the coast.
Right. I'm sure that they won't have any tidal flooding there at all.
And with the wind blowing offshore. Right. But in North Carolina, Fran has made landfall now near Cape Fear, around the Southport area. We had an amateur radio operator a couple of hours ago reporting a wind gust to 124 miles an hour as the hurricane hit over around the Southport area. And then really, I think some of the hardest hit places, John, are going to be Curry Beach, Carolina Beach, and up towards Wrightsville Beach. Those barrier islands, much like we saw with Hurricane Opal in the areas in the Florida Panhandle, we had to deal with a lot of damage. Some of those beaches were closed for a couple of months to the public over well to the east, fortunately, of Gulf Shores, but over in the Panhandle of Florida. And I think tomorrow, once we hit first light, we're going to see probably some pictures that we don't really want to see, but are probably going to be likely once we get this storm through the area.
Right along the South Carolina border there, up around North Myrtle Beach, I would be anxious to see how they make out. But the cities, as you point out, Seaside, just to the west, Ocean Isle Beach, Holden Beach, I think very hard hit.
Okay, John, we're going to take a break from our continuing live coverage. Once again, we have Jill Brown in the eye of Hurricane Fran. We're going to try to go back to her in about 10 minutes at 10 Eastern, 9 Central, and also Jeff Morrow, Myrtle Beach, Wrightsville Beach, Jim Cantore. We're going to take a brief break, so stay with us. We're continuing coverage on Fran. We'll take a break, check your local forecast so you can make your weekend plans, and then we'll be right back.
Coming up on a special edition of WeatherScope, the latest on Hurricane Fran, right after your local forecast.